how did your wife discover that you were addicted to porn? I mean, you were married for 20 years.
Yeah, there were definitely times when I would be convicted and feel like I would go cold turkey, if you will, to just say, "Hey, I'm stopping that," because there was always the sense that I wanted to someday. And, it was just a Holy Spirit in my heart saying, "Hey, this isn't right." So, but I didn't have the motivation. I guess at least I didn't feel that I did. There was something holding me back, and the story that is true that occurred was I was going off on a business trip 12 years ago, and I was in the airport and I saw a little note sticking out of the pocket of my suitcase before I got on the airplane. And I thought, what's that doing there? I don't remember putting that there. So I was getting on the plane, reading it as I was boarding, and all of a sudden, my heart sank, and it was a note from my oldest daughter, who at the time was about 16 years old. And she had found history on our family computer that only could lead back to her father. Of some of the images and some of the things that were being looked at some days prior to that, apparently. And so I'm leaving on a 3-day trip. I'm ready just to like turn around and come back and don't know what I'm supposed to do with all that. And to her credit, at 16, she said, "I'm not going to talk to your mom, her mom, about that. But I really am asking you to get help and do something." And so I really felt, rightfully so, that my back was against the wall, because if I chose not to do that, and she followed up with me and said, "Did you ever do anything?" And I couldn't answer her truthfully that I had. I really feel like she could have been the one to blow open the doors to my wife about this issue. So I told her I would, and very quickly, when I got back, actually set up an appointment with a man who deals with this and is a therapist and a counselor. And
what were you experiencing? What were the emotions when you read the letter, and how, what are the next 3 days after when you came back? When you confronted your daughter, what was that? What was the atmosphere in the house? How did you? Do you remember those feelings?
Absolutely, it was, I guess, as close as I could get. Say it was like a little nuclear bomb had dropped in my life, because all of a sudden, all of the carefully hidden things that I thought that I had been doing were being blown up, and I knew that there was just no going back. I couldn't cover that back up again and go back to life as it was. And my heart probably palpitated hard for 3 straight days, wondering, how am I going to do this, and what's it going to be? Because I knew then that I needed to share truthfully with my wife, what this life had been like. And so I actually went to my first meeting with this gentleman. I managed to get one literally right the day I was arriving back at home, and I didn't even tell her I was going, because I wanted to see what it was about. Maybe he would give me some insight as to how you go about sharing this with your loved one, And so I did that, and I came home and just with anxiety, unbelievable anxiety, just asked her if we could talk, my wife and I, separately or quietly in our bedroom privately. And I shared with her, what my story had been about. And all of a sudden, I think the scales fell from her eyes, if you will, about like, now I understand. I understand why we've been so remote with each other. I understand, why you've been standoffish. I understand why our intimacy levels have dropped, because you didn't have interest, and all those things. And it all was just in a matter of minutes that this took place. So it was very cataclysmic, if you will, in terms of how it all occurred. And I still knew then that I, had to have a better conversation with my daughter, who had found all this, and apologize to her and all that was going to lead to it coming from that.
How did you build back trust after after you shared the story with your wife? I mean, that just, what was the process?
Yeah. It's funny because it was 12 years ago that this began, that this story of redemption, I guess, or recovery began. And the building back of trust was kind of, I guess, that old thing of 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I'd feel like I was making progress. She would, and then something would remind her or trigger her, or an argument would entail that would make her feel completely like we were back at ground zero. And so that first 4 years of me going through individual counseling on a regular basis and feeling like I was making strides was positive. But it sort of had some backsliding about 6 months into the fourth year, and then when I had to share that second time with her that, hey, there's been some backsliding there because we were getting some odd emails that she had seen 4 years ago and said, why are we getting those types of emails? And it wasn't ever a situation where I was reaching out to anybody personally. But computers track what you look at and that sort of thing, as I think most people know. And all of a sudden, these strange emails were starting to come through. And I was just laying in bed with her one Saturday morning. She said, "Why do you think those are coming back again?" And my first thought was, I'm going to lie about this. But a split second later, I thought, this is what I have to tell the truth. I'm learning that that's what's necessary. And I did. And it was like a bigger nuclear bomb had gone off, because she had thought that for 4 years we were gaining more trust. We were redeveloping our relationship. And here it was again, I had failed, if you will. But I really felt that it was important, but only when confronted, for me to tell her, hey, things are starting to go back into a bad way. But that truly was the beginning. And when I talk about having 8+ years of sobriety, that was because that was in December of 2015. And since that time, I've been 100% sober.
When you say sober, what does that mean?
Sober means what we would call no physical acting out in any way and no viewing of any pornography. Both of those things, I had believed for the first 4 years and that last 6 months that as long as I was physically not acting out, that I was good. And if I was viewing pictures that were inappropriate, that was better than not, it was sobriety, but it was not a great sobriety. And I only came to learn as I came to a group of men led by a counselor that their definition and now my definition is both of those have to be in sync together. You can't say, well, I'm acting out physically, but I'm not looking at anything. Or you can't say I'm looking at inappropriate pictures, but I'm not acting out, because both of them are for the same goal, which is to numb your mind, to take you away from life's challenges. And just like any other addiction, whether it's gambling, drugs, alcohol, the main goal of pornography and physically acting out or cheating, on your wife or whatever is all oftentimes because we're trying to numb ourselves from the hard feelings of life.